Today's episode is especially for you if jumps have ever felt intimidating, inconsistent, or exhausting. I'm joined by Christina, the founder of Face the Barre, a ballet coaching platform dedicated to helping dancers build strong, sustainable technique through clarity, anatomy-informed training, and smart habits. Christina brings both professional performance experience and years of teaching experience, and she has a real gift for making complex movement feel clear and doable, especially when it comes to jumps. Because there was so much to cover, this is a two-part conversation. In part one, we focus on foundation, how jump technique begins at the bar, what plié, tendu, and dégagé are really preparing you for, and how adult dancers can start building better jumping habits before ever leaving the floor. Ready? Let's get into part one of this jam-packed conversation with Christina.
Thank you so much for being here, Christina. I am so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here on the other side this time.
Yeah, I know for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, Christina had me on an Instagram live probably, I don't know, like 6-7 months ago, maybe?
Yeah.
And it was so fun, but she was interviewing me. So now the tables have turned.
No, it's going to be good. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to getting your insights on this topic in particular because jumps are such a common struggle amongst adult dancers, as I'm sure you have experienced in teaching adults. And I know that you are going to have so many great tips and insights just as a former professional dancer and then now as someone who teaches. So I was thinking we could start with one of the things that I hear a lot and also personally experience as an adult dancer is just that feeling of being really weighed down when you're jumping. And so when an adult dancer says something to you like, I feel really heavy when I jump, what's usually the first thing that you notice when someone is experiencing that feeling?
Yeah. So I would say that most commonly it could be two things. Number one, plié. The plié being stuck. So when you jump, you always want to make sure, and obviously as with anything else, this starts from the bar, that you're really melting into that plie to then quickly rebound. The thing that I see most commonly is that the plie at the bottom of it gets stuck. But then when it comes to jumping, you immediately cut off that energy that that plie is supposed to create. And that is the point where one would say, it feels really heavy for me to get back up because you stuck there. And the second thing is kind of related to this, would be the fact that the plie is simply too long. So this is especially in petit allegro, but also in grand allegro. So you want to make sure that the plie is always a quicker motion, and then you actually have longer for the jump. So for example, even if we're talking about like common petit allegro combination, let's say glissade assemblée. If you would glissade, you would plie, and you would assemblée all in the same tempo, then you're going to feel heavy. So you want to make sure that, and this is for other jumps as well, that you're kind of doing that plie quickly to then have the emphasis on the assemblée. Even if you're doing your regular sautés from first position, again, it's not down and up and down. It's like a up and a up and a up. So there's a different kind of accent almost. Yeah. But that plie being either locked or that plie being simply too long is the thing that is going to make you feel heavy. But that's actually the same, like I said, not just for petit allegro, but even if you're doing grand allegro, you're doing a grand jeté. If your preparation for that jeté is too long and you're staying there in your plié and you're brushing your leg, again, you've cut the momentum. So you always want to make sure that the brush is quick, and then the part that is in the air, that's the one where you need the time. And that's the one where you see the photos of the dancers and they're midair. That's how they stay there. But again, if you have it all in the same tempo, that heaviness is going to come in, and that does not mean that you're heavy or that you're not suited for jumps. It's usually either a plié issue or just a timing issue that the plié is simply too long.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I'm curious if you can explain a little bit about how that would work at the bar with training that correctly, because I think, as you said, everything starts at the bar. And so the habits that we're building in our bar work is what then translates into center. And so when you're talking about not getting stuck, what would that look like even very beginning of class, first plie combination? What's the difference in feeling, even just like range of motion wise? Like, are we supposed to be going through our maximum range of motion? Just like all those nitty gritty details, if you could just get into it.
Yeah. So the very first plie combination at the bar, the best cue, what I found, is to tell somebody that every single note that you hear during your pliés is supposed to be used. So let's say that you're doing 2 demi-pliés and you know the plié music. It's never going to be anything sharp. It's always lyrical. So, and you should also learn how to count in your head in a lyrical manner. So instead of thinking 1 and 2, because that doesn't match the music, because it's usually da dum bum. So in your head, first of all, learn how to stretch out all the counts. 1 and 2 and that is going to, I always still to this point, I count in my head. And that somehow goes into my body as well. That stretching out that singular count and then doing so for the whole entire combination. But the point is that you're almost, let's say if it's a demi plie, that you're going, you do want to reach your maximum range in a demi plie, that's for sure. But that when you do that, you slowly, with that count in your head, as soon as you melt and reach the bottom, you don't stay there, but you immediately start stretching back up. So it creates this elasticity of the down, and then the down is the one that pushes you back up. And that is the thing that is going to come into the jumps, because if you go down, even if you went there gracefully and you had that count in your head, but you stop there, for the jump specifically, that's the momentum cut. So you do want to go bum, and you reach the max, you feel like you're reaching the max, and you're already starting to straighten again. And if you do that with that count in your head, everything becomes, I always say, it's like one singular movement. It's not, I have the 1 demi, I have the 2nd demi, and then I have my ground. No, it's the bend going into the stretch, into the next bend, into the stretch, and immediately into the ground. So there's no pauses in between. But this is something super common, and that elasticity, I think why it's tricky for people is it's just a tricky motion to create. It's much easier just bend and to stretch. But this is the thing that requires a lot of practice. But if you really try to connect with the music that you're hearing, like in a frappe, it's sharp, right? And you're doing the sharp motions. Here, you'll never hear anything sharp in pliés. So if you listen to the music and that counting in your head and thinking that I'm doing one singular long movement, not separate parts in the combination, it's all one.
If you love ballet and books, I've got something just for you, the Bunhead Book Club. Together, we dive into books inspired by the beauty of ballet and the lives of dancers, both real and fictional. It's the perfect way to connect with other adult ballet lovers. Registration for the next session is now open, and spots fill up quickly, so don't miss your chance to join the community. Visit thebusybunhead.com to register. I can't wait to meet you. Now, on with the show.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of having weight in your heels while you're doing plie, what that role is, and how that translates to jumps. Because I'm someone who really struggles with petite allegro, and I think it's because I don't come all the way into a correct plie with my heels being all the way down on the ground. And so if you could talk about the role of heels, weight in the heels, what is correct, how that impacts jumps. I would love to hear it just even for my own benefit.
Of course, I mean, this is actually a little bit of a tricky issue because there's 2 sides in this. 2 sides is better. Sometimes there's a million sides in ballet who all argue and think that their way is the only way. But I've heard people say that you should have more of your body weight on the ball of your foot. Then there's other people that say that the body weight between the ball of the foot and the heel needs to be even. For me, I've been told that it's even. And for me, it's important because if you start pliéing, which is then, like you said, going to go into your jumps anyways, with more of the body weight on the ball of the foot, automatically your heel will slightly disconnect. Why you don't want to have that in jumps is because it's going to put a lot of pressure onto your shins. And shin splints, any kinds of issues with shins are very common in ballet anyway, especially when it comes to the jumping. So that's why I would always encourage everyone to have the body weight evenly. And then also you have more of a chance to, again, create that energy, which is what you need when you plie releve into your pirouette or when you jump, because there's just simply more of your foot connected to the ground. And for me personally, I just feel like it creates more power. However, if you watch even like New York City ballet dancers, because they're balanchine, they don't have their heels connected to the floor. I'm not going to say anything about that because they are absolutely incredible dancers. There's a lot of them that never get injured, but maybe it's because they've been trained like that since the very beginning, so their body is accustomed to that. Now, another thing in terms of what you just said is that if everybody has a different Achilles, so some people can go really deep into their demi, others cannot. So if you feel like, or if anybody else feels like, I am going into my demi and I feel that my heels are slowly wanting to disconnect, that is just an Achilles issue. You probably have a shorter Achilles, which is fine. It's maybe a little bit harder to work with in some terms. It's not a disaster at all, but you are going to go up until the point where you feel like I can still sustain that connection. If you start going to try to push a little bit further, that heel will come off the ground. There's just nothing you can do about it. Is anatomy. But it's fine if you have a little bit less range in your plie. It's completely fine. Just don't go past that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
one of the challenges, and I don't know if other adults feel this way, and I think it may be a common feeling, is just that with ballet, you have that tension, I guess, of everything needs to feel very lifted and elevated and long, but then for plie and jumps, there does need to be a little bit of groundedness. And so
Yes.
it's like that opposing tension that I think can be really
That's
hard.
the one. That's the one
Uh,
that you're always, because you're going down, right? And for a normal person, if somebody tells me to go down, I'm going to go down in one piece.
yeah.
But in ballet, the tricky part is that your foot is pushing into the floor, but at the same time, everything else is lifting up. And that opposing feeling is a really hard feeling to get into your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was easy,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be ballet, right?
Exactly. But that's the groundedness comes, like you said, that comes from the foot, and it's always like that. I almost want to push like through the floor. That's the thing that I found the most useful with everyone that I'm teaching, like literally feel like you're pushing the floor away.
It's kind of a perfect segue because I wanted to talk about the role of tendu and dégagé or jeté or glissé, whichever, whatever you call it in your school. But how those things set the foundation for petit allegro and jumps, and what specific exercises at the bar should adults really be putting in that effort to do correctly. Like, I think there's some things, I mean, really everything at the bar is connected to center. We know that. But I think it's tempting, especially in tendu exercises, dégagé exercises. It's almost feels kind of like a throwaway, you're just trying to get through it. So what would you say are those connection points? Like, why is that so important to be doing correctly? And what are some of the things adults should really be thinking about doing well at the bar?
It comes into play because, again, if you ask a person to jump up, point their toes, and then land back on the floor, what they kind of automatically want to do is go from the pointed position and then land flat immediately. But if you look at, again, it's so good to watch things actually in slow motion. If you watch someone jump in slow motion, they go through the demi point, then they point their toes in the air, then they land almost as if they were going to land on their toes, but they don't. They go through that demi point again. And what is that? That is a tendu, and that is a dégagé. And the dégagé is especially important because, like I said before, now depending on the school, if you do a grand jeté with a straight leg, what does that leg do? Yep. It doesn't dégagé. The dégagé then goes into a grand bamman, and then you jump. So if you start thinking about, like, they're there for the articulation, number one, there's another point for the articulation of the feet. And as I mentioned, you don't go up and then land flat back down. You always roll through. Everything is rolling through. And that rolling through starts from the tendus and the dégagés. Another part, especially for petit allegro, because there's going to be some beats in there in the future. The beats is you crossing your legs. If you tendu into fifth, even if you tendu into first, to be honest, but it's more, you feel it more when you do it into fifth because you're crossing the legs. That motion, even though we're just doing it with the one leg, again, that's your petit allegro. So at the bar, your task is always during the tendus and the dégagés to find where are my lovely inner thighs. Something that I say all the time to everybody. Anything from an open position when you close and cross your leg, or even if you do it into first, that's all inner thighs. And if you don't find that connection with the inner thighs, what's going to happen in petit allegro, and again, this is a super common mistake, that instead of beating from side to side, you end up going back and front. So let's say you need to do an entrechecot. Instead of going side, you go back front because you haven't found that crossing connection, which starts from the inner thighs. So that's why I know, and I completely understand. I'm in the same boat. Tendus and dégagés is not the most exciting thing to be doing. But as you said as well, it all starts from there. And it's that articulation, and it's finding the right muscles, and then already thinking there at the bar, wait, but why am I doing this? Why am I doing this multiple times a week? Why is the bar in the class in the order that it's in? And always trying to think, what does this movement look like? What is it similar to? That was completely wrong English. What does it resemble in the center?
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, this is just my opinion, and I would love to hear if you agree or not, but I think one of the things that I've noticed is that adults a lot of times can feel like they're executing things decently well at the bar and they're getting comfortable, and then they get to the center and it just kind of all falls apart, and there's this jump, you know, that's happening between bar and center where it's like, why? And I think one of the biggest things is overuse of the bar and like gripping. And so then when you're trying to make that transition away from the bar, it's too big of a transition because you've been relying too much. And so one of the things that I feel like has been really helpful for me is, as I've progressed, just trying to have as light of a touch on the bar as possible, and to really have almost no like curling of my fingers around the bar, but just setting my fingers on top, because I feel like for me that's been such a practical way to bridge that gap between bar and center and start working on fixing bad habits at the bar that I almost didn't even realize I had. And so I think that's a great way, in my experience, to kind of make that jump a little less huge.
It's absolutely true. I've seen so many people as well that I've looked at them at the bar and I was like, wow, that person is like amazing. I was almost like, mind blown. And then in the center, it just kind of went down a little bit. Not saying that it turned bad, but it wasn't as solid as the bar. But it makes perfect sense because you are there, you know that the bar is there, and automatically, unless you're actively thinking about it, you will want to hold on to it very tightly. And as things get faster, you want to do it even more. But the sooner you start doing what you're doing now, and it doesn't need to be like I'm going immediately from a grip to now just gently having my fingers there. Go through the in-between parts and class by class build that habit because you know that you are going to be safe. If something happens, it is there. And if it's a disastrous situation, I can really quickly grab it. But the quicker you stop the grip, the stronger your center is going to be. And then you will immediately realize, am I on my supporting leg? Yeah. Am I tilting some kind of way? Do I have a habit of arching? Am I collapsing the other way? That little lift of the arm is going to show you everything.
Yeah. It's so revealing and so humbling. You actually started to touch on the next thing I was going to ask when you mentioned arching the back, because we've talked about kind of below the waist, what's going on for good jumps. But I would love to hear the role of complete body alignment and what issues do you commonly see in adults, and how can we be assessing that our entire body posture and alignment is correct for maximizing our jumps?
Even if somebody has really good and solid pliés, and when they do their demis, nothing is changing. Like there's no arching of the back. There's no excessive tilt of the pelvis towards the back. In jumps, that is the first thing that creeps in. However, again, if we put logic into it, if your pelvis during your plie, right before you're about to take off, or also when you land, because when you land, there's usually a next jump coming straight after. If your pelvis is tilted towards the back and your upper body is forward, then as you jump up, you have to do so much extra work while you're in the air to correct that position. And that is something that they always do. They manage to plie a little bit incorrectly, then correct it in the air, and then land incorrectly again. And I always say that you're making yourself do so much extra work and taking, again, power away from focusing on that jump, which probably is also going to make you feel a little bit heavy. I know it's really uncomfortable, but the best way, it's not even somebody else telling it to you, because I could bark in your ear the whole day. That's not the point. If you see it, and then that sight is eventually going to turn into you actually feeling it, that's where the progress is going to happen. So if you have a mirror, and if you can turn yourself sideways, like I said, it's super uncomfortable because you have to turn your head and watch what happens. If you jump in a row, even just from first, regular sautés, and watch what is happening in terms of your pelvis and in terms of your upper body. Or mistake number 2 is the arch and the pelvis. So it's either the pelvis and the upper body forward, or it's the arch and the pelvis together. Yeah. So if you just slowly try to turn sideways and watch what happens, because you know what it needs to be. It all needs to be stacked on top of one another. So everything is in a neutral line. That is not to say that somebody can't have a booty. Like, not everybody has a flat booty, obviously. So I have a booty. I see it there. That's not the thing. That's not the issue, right? But you're going to see if there's going to be an excessive tilt of the pelvis. But the main thing is that you want to go up all in one piece, and you want to come back down exactly the same way. Yeah. And one other thing that happens a lot, it's almost harder actually, from what I can now recall with my students, if the arms are just in place. So let's say they're throughout the whole combination, they're just in preparation, because then
Get the bouncing.
they got the bouncing. So that's another thing. Try to find, again, from the bar onwards, that connection always, 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 especially in the jumps too, with your upper back. So if you just like the best cue that I found, because I've tried all different kinds of things, it's not like take your shoulder blades together because then people arch. It's none of that. If you just try to push actively your shoulders, both of them, into the floor as if you had weights or sandbags or something on them. And if you really actively do that, you feel how your lats are going to engage. And if your lats engage and then your arms are in a position, they're not going to want to move. But that connection with the lats is so important. And then it's the same if you use your port bras when you jump. So if you move on from petit allegro, and let's say you're already using port bras, you're doing échappés, you're doing glissade, assemblées, jetés, whatever, then always find the help in the arms. The arms are in their positions for a reason. They're not just there as a decoration. Of course, they look pretty, but when you go up, the arms usually come up. When you go down, the arms usually slightly lower. So if you can really get that arm and leg connection and you understanding why it's like this, that's also going to be a game changer. The same if you just like développé and the arms need to come to fifth, that happens at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is the same thing here. It's absolutely the same thing. But the main cue in terms of everything else, alignment wise, is to try and look and see you're all in a one line. And if you do that, you're not going to have any problems. And if you find yourself arching, then it's probably usually a little bit of a glute issue. Because if you don't activate your glutes, you're way more likely to arch. As soon as you activate the glutes, you will see, you can literally try the same thing with the mirror and you try to make that pelvis neutral, you activate your glutes, the arch will disappear. Because again,
Yeah.
they're connected to one another.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned it earlier, and I think jumps is, again, such a great place to use videoing and then slow motion to see the things that you're doing, because then you can not worry about having to look in a mirror. You can just do
Exactly.
what would feel
Yeah.
natural, and then you have the power to slow it down and rewatch. And I think that that's just like such a great way to self-assess when it comes to jumps. And I think too, you touched on this, and I think it's such a great thing for adult dancers to almost be given the permission. Like, I wish someone had told me this sooner in my ballet journey, because I think so much of ballet, it feels like there's a right way and there's a wrong way, and you just have to do it the right way. But so much of ballet for each individual is experimentation of finding things in your body. And I was talking about this with Julie from Broche Ballet about how um, sometimes it's like you have to push it to what feels so uncomfortable, like this couldn't possibly be right. So, like, I know for me, I'm someone who has the tendency to arch my back a little bit and kind of sit in my low back. So much of ballet for me has been finding that place where, like, to me and my natural inclination, it feels wrong. But when I actually look in the mirror, it's correct alignment. And so I think so much of finding what is, yes, correct, but so much of it is experimenting, not just do it this way. It's like you have to find it, and that takes time. And it's the same end, like you're still searching for doing things correctly, but I think it's a different mindset when you allow yourself to approach it with a feeling of experimentation.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like I actually said this at the when I was teaching at the intensive. This is not about jumps, but for example, some people turn better when they have a wider first. Some people turn better when they bring their arms closer to them. Some people turn better when they cross their arms a little bit. So I cannot sit here and tell you, Hannah, you have to put your arms like this. No, I can say that you can do this, this, and this. And then you can, in your own time, try to find and feel what is the best way for you. And even if in my school, like in Vaganova school, you cannot cross your arms. That is like a no-no. But as I said to the girls at the intensive, if you are going to do beautiful pirouettes for me with your arms slightly crossed, who am I to say something, You turn nicely, you're in a correct position, you look beautiful. If they're
Yeah.
crossed, they're crossed. It doesn't matter because it's so different. And I'm sure this is going into everything else as well. Like, yes, for me, it was this way. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the same way for you. Yeah. So it's that I love that you said the experimenting. That is the right word. Finding what is right for you and what feels right for you.
So we are actually going to make this a 2-part episode because there's just so much good content and Christina is giving us so many helpful tips. Thank you so much. So make sure you tune in next week for the second part. But before we jump off, Christina, will you tell people where they can find you and see all the fun things that you're doing?
I have a lot of really good and longer stuff on YouTube. Also, if you type in Face the Barre, you can find me there as well. Also on TikTok, same username. TikTok, not so much. Instagram and YouTube, I would say, are the better ones. And the YouTube is the long content. And then I also have my website. So facethebarre.com. And there you can find everything that I'm doing, my Saturday Zoom classes, and the upcoming ballet studio in Tallinn. So there's a lot of stuff happening.
I love it. I'm going to put all of the links to Christina's platforms in the show notes so that you guys can follow her. And like I mentioned, we will be back next week for part 2. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can join the after-class Corps de Ballet for just $3 a month through the listener support feature. It really helps keep the podcast going, and as a member, you'll even get a special shout-out in future episodes. All the links mentioned in this episode, including the link to join the Corps, are included in the show notes. See you next week after class!